Hello, I'm Ronnie Moore. Thanks for joining me here in my art studio. I'm delighted to have you here. You're very welcome. Today I'm going to do this video in two parts. In the first part, I will just be using one colour, and I'm going to do a watercolour sky, wet into wet. And in the second part, I'm going to add another colour, burnt sienna, and see the results that we get from that. It's a good idea to start out with just a few colours, even just to start out with one colour and get the flow of how the water runs across the paper. And, you know, rather than going out and spending a lot of money on a huge big array of colours that you might never like or might never want. I've painted another painting. I've done a video on another painting of full Irish landscape. If you want to see that, you can click on the link in the description below. And I've used the same technique as I'm using today for the sky. So we're just really going to concentrate on the sky today. I might just put in a little bit of effect of a sea or something just to finish it off. But if you want to see the effect of the technique in a completed painting, you can click on that link. The second part of the video then I'll be using introducing the other colour, just to give a bit of light in the sky behind it. So now onto the materials. The paper I'm using is Arches paper, and it's a very heavy weight. It's a beautiful paper to work on. It's 300 pound or 640 grams per square metre. That weight is a description of the weight of 500 sheets of full-size 17 by 22 inch paper. That's what the weight of the paper means. So a much lighter paper could be nice to work on, but this is really beautiful. It holds the paint very well. So that's that, and I have anything to hold it underneath. It doesn't really matter. A bit of wood, a bit of cardboard, or whatever. This I use. You can use anything. You could use a plate, you could use a palette, you could use anything you like, but I like this because I like to make up the little washes in each of these little, they look like something that you bake cupcakes in, but don't. It's plastic. These are my paints. I'll show you the colours as I go along. This is the Indigo and the Burnt Sienna. They're both Windsor Newton artist quality. I'm going to use two brushes today. This is just a little flat brush that you get in any art shop. You probably get something similar in a hardware shop as well. It says Vinci on it, so that sounds good. I think it's 1 inch. And this is Princeton No. 6. What's more important to me actually in a smallish brush or in any brush of these rounded brushes is the point of it, how good the point is, because no matter what size the brush is, if it has a really good point, you can do very fine work with it. So just always make sure you get a brush with a nice point on it. Sponge and 2 containers of water, one for washing the brush in and the other for using the water, where I would dip the sponge in and put in little bits into the wells like this. A piece of paper, very, very important to test your colours. You don't want to be testing your colours on the picture. So test your colours on this to make sure you're happy with them. And then some kitchen toweling or some kind of paper there to mop up accidents and to wipe off the brush sometime or whatever. Okay, so those are the materials I'm using today. Not very much, as you can see. 2 brushes, 2 paints, 2 containers, 1 piece of test paper, 1 of these, and some paper. And of course, the beautiful Arches watercolour paper. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to put some painting out here so as I can make out. I can use it as I need it. It's the Indigo. I'm going to put little splashes of water in here to make the washes. When you say a wash is water with a bit of paint in it. Okay, make a few different ones. Now we'll put in. I'll make one. I want different tones. See, it's the same colour, but we're going to use 3 or 4 different tones in it. We'll test each one here as we go. Even I could do lighter than that even. which means more water. If you want, watercolour is unlike acrylic or oils in that you don't add white to make it paler, you add water to make it paler because you're using the white of the page. That's your white. Okay. It's a very powerful colour, as you can see. Like lots of other colours, if you put that much water into it, it would disappear. So I'll have that. Now we'll make a heavier colour, a heavier tone, I should say. That's this here. And then if I wanted really, really dark, I can maybe just even make down here a really, really, really dark one, which is almost pure paint. Okay, so that's the light one, the medium one, and the really, really dark one. And I'm going to use this for cleaning my brush. Even that's a gorgeous colour. I love it. I like to fill glass bottles with that paint and just put them on a windowsill or somewhere. Now, the technique that I'm using now is called wet into wet. That means we have the wet paint and we're going to have a wet page because I'm going to wet it. Now, I'm going to just do a sky down as far as here. I might do a little bit of a very fast effective sea or something there. So you might say, why do I wet the whole page when I'm doing the sky? Why don't I just wet the area that I'm going to paint? The reason for that is that if you only wet a section of it, it could buckle or cause a little bump in the page. So I'm going to dip that in the water, squeeze it out, and just wet the whole page. Now, I'm going to use this brush. I'm going to start with the lighter one. Remember, watercolour is transparent, and so you can paint dark over light, but you can't do it the other way around. I'm going to leave some white as well for clouds. I want the sea to be just here. If you wanted to lift a little bit of paint off, like if you wanted a little bit more white down here at this stage, you can just lift off little bits as well if you want. Okay, now I'm using the darker one to come in. Now, I have the page flat so that the camera can get it in focus, but normally I would be holding it up. I'll just show you, I'd be holding it up like this to let it run. I'm getting some really, really, really dark stuff as well. Come down here. Now I can use the smaller brush to sort of guide it. Wet into wet is kind of a silent technique. You don't hear that sound. It's just silent. Which is a nice way of thinking of it, really. Because you're just letting it flow. Put some streaks down here. You could let it, so you can hold it like that and get sideways and get some really nice effects. Of a stormy sky. I have no exact plan in my head for the rest of this, for any of this painting, because I like to see what's going to happen. With watercolour, I'm always saying, I probably repeat myself time and time again through the videos, but the water is a better artist than you or I will ever be, and so it's to let the water do its thing, have nice effects of the water. Okay, so that's enough really for the sky. Now what I can do now is, if I was to start doing painting in the sea now, on top of that it would seep up into it, but I'm going to leave, it's fairly dry now here, it dries fairly quick. Depends a lot on the room, it depends on the day, it depends on what rate it dries at, but If I leave a space here, if I can see, we can see properly. Now, when you're painting water, what you have to do is you have to vary the tone from the back to the front, from the side to the other side. That's the thing about it. It has to vary. If you paint all the one shade, the whole thing flat down, it's just flat and looks like it's going to fall out of the page. And the technique, I'm going to be using a lot of dry brush in this, which is this, because it gives a nice effect of the waves and the disturbance of the wind on the sea. Might just go across a little bit with this here first. And leave those little bits. See, those nice little bits there are actually lovely. That's a kind of a dry brushing. But now I'll go on with this and maybe some heavier. You can grab an opportunity to when something happens. Like for instance, that looks like a little circle of white. I didn't intend that to happen. But what I could do is I could come up here and I could just actually remove a little bit there and it would look like a kind of a reflection of the moon. With watercolour, you never know exactly what's going to happen. And that's the beauty of it. But it's been able to... I have to just hold that up for 1 second to get it right. A bit more over there. There. Looks a bit like the reflection. Sometimes you have little things that just happen and they can be very good things. Right. Now I continue with this. The dry brushing is when you don't have very much paint on your brush and you're dragging it like that. Imagine that you have something on your brush, stuck on your brush, you're trying to get it off, which is kind of what you're doing really in a way. Okay. You can use even pure paint. Drag it across. Remember, vary it. It has to be, a bit different in the front or at the sides or whatever. You go right through that, even with right through the moon reflection. And you can dry brush a little bit more ripples on the water up here when it dries a bit as well. Yeah, for a dry brush, your page has to be dry, and your paint has to be not too wet. I'm just leaving those little white bits for little waves and things. You can use the tip of your brush even in pure paint to put in little dark bits where there's little shadows under the waves. It'll all make sense at the end, hopefully. Made the horizon slightly crooked, but it's okay. Now what I'm going to do now, just for the fun of it, is I think I'm going to use another technique called paint removal, which is just exactly what it says. It's clean brush. Wipe it off a little bit, and now I'm going to put in a sailboat somewhere. Now, where will I put the sailboat? I think I'll put it just here. I don't want to put anything right in the centre. It might be off there in the distance. It might be nice. Let me think. I think I might do it over here. No, I won't. I'll do it here. Okay. So I'm just thinking of a big white sail. Remember, again, there's no white paint. I'm not using any white paint, and I'm just going to remove the paint to expose the white paper underneath. Actually, indigo is probably one of the hardest to remove because it's a very powerful colour. It's a staining colour, and it's But it's lovely though, I love it. We'll do our best. Just keep rubbing it gently, getting, you know, think of the shape of the sail as well. Might be getting kind of full of wind from that side there. Might be billowing out a little bit. Can you see it's beginning to remove? It's just I don't know if you can see that very well at this point, but it's just beginning to remove. Now I'm going to put a tiny bit of paint on the brush, just a little bit image of the actual boat, and didn't need to do it. That's not supposed to be there. White didn't come out very well there. Right, just a little bit more dry brushing for a little bit more texture in the water. So I think that's it. That's all I do. So that's just using one colour, some nice paper and 2 brushes. Always keep a frame or 2 around so that when you're painting, you can just put it into the frame and you see it through different eyes really when you look at it. I always advise my students to do that. And here at the studio, I always keep spare frames around so that the students can see their work in a frame. So I just put this in a frame to let you see the difference.